Welcome back to my channel at The Movie Optimist, everybody. Last night I had the opportunity, with my uncle, to see the newest film, A Better Man. This movie is about the rise of a very popular British performer in Robbie Williams, and him detailing the story about how he battled his inner demons all the way to the top and what that cost him. Now, I was already really excited to see this movie just because I knew it was from the same director of A Greatest Showman, which is one of my favorite musicals of all time. But I'm not gonna lie, the trailer did put me off a little bit because, well, if you've seen the trailer, it's Robbie Williams, but he's being played by a chimpanzee. And I was like, I kind of would have rathered them just hire somebody that looked like a younger version of himself, a human being, because I can relate to that more because I am not a chimpanzee. But in reading, like articles about their decision to do that, I kind of get it. Essentially, Robbie Williams always felt like he was treated like a circus chimp, just kind of dancing around for all of his agents and stuff like that. And he always felt slightly less evolved than human beings. So when they approached him about making this movie, he was like, we'll do it, but we're going to cast a chimpanzee in the role. Now, obviously they use CGI, but it is weird, but after the first 15 to 20 minutes, you kind of just accept it. And I actually wound up really loving the decision to do that because it was a character in and of itself in this movie. Now, this movie starts off with Robbie as a little boy, and he idolizes his dad. He wants his dad's approval, and his dad is a very hardworking man who idolizes Frank Sinatra and the singers of that generation so much that Robbie doesn't really want to be a pop star, but he wants his dad to look at him like one. And that's kind of what sets him on the course to becoming famous, because he wants to impress his father. So when a local talent agent comes to town, he goes and does a bit for them, and they wind up liking him, and he gets to become part of like a boy band, like Britain's version of like NSYNC or Backstreet Boys, Boys to Men. And it's funny, you see it in the trailer. The agent that hires them all essentially says, look around this table. All of us in 5 years are going to absolutely hate each other, but we're all going to be filthy, stinking rich. And in Robbie's eyes, that's everything he wanted, because then his dad would respect him. So a couple years pass, and not only does he actually start to hate everybody, just like the agent says, but he finds out that he actually has a talent in songwriting, and he writes down these songs in his little notebook, and he constantly wants to perform them, but the band won't let him do it because it's so unlike what they're singing. It's not that boy band type music. And he starts to rebel against them and causes the other performers in that boy band that they're in to hate him. And ultimately, he winds up getting fired and forced out onto his own. It's there that he starts, reaching out and having people help him bring his songs to life, which soars him to the top. He becomes super famous. But with that, they actually talk about it in the movie. There's a scene in the movie where they beautifully detail what it's like to be famous, and essentially like when you're in a restaurant and you're getting a birthday cake given to you, and the entire staff and restaurant are all singing happy birthday to you, and you have no idea who these people are, and it's very uncomfortable, and you just want the song to end so you could eat your cake. And that's kind of what fame is like. It's just having all these strangers around you at all times, and it's very claustrophobic, and it causes him to start abusing drugs and alcohol, and he gets really bad with it and hits a really, really low point in his life. But for the sake of not spoiling anything, he winds up fixing himself and getting him back on the right path, and ultimately becoming the Robbie Williams that everyone knows today. Now, what makes his movie stand out amongst other movies, because you've all seen it, the rock star that abuses drugs, hits a low, and then has to rebuild himself back and work his way up back to the top. But what does it here so much better than a lot of other movies, even in something like The Greatest Showman, that movie is a very uplifting movie, and even when Hugh Jackman's at a low, it's not like a crazy low where he's like literally snorting cocaine, cheating on his wife, and drinking himself into a coma, passing out on stage. This movie shows you like the true horrors of abusing that substances, and it makes it feel a lot more grounded in reality, and you care a lot more about this character because it's something very real that goes on today. This movie also has a ton of heart that, for me personally, I related to on a very deep level, because whereas in Robbie is trying to get the approval of his father, his best friend is his grandma, and it's his grandma that gives him the courage to pursue this path when he just feels like a nobody, and she makes him feel like a somebody. And that, to me, was what my grandma did for me in terms of chasing my dreams as a filmmaker. And he also has this obsession with Frank Sinatra, which is also something that I love deeply because of my grandpa showing me those songs when I was really young. So there's a lot of times while I was watching this movie that I felt like it was like I was watching myself as a young kid grow up, because he, again, was, hanging out with his grandma, was being raised by his grandma a lot of the time, singing songs about Frank Sinatra, and it was just very personal to me. So I walked away with a different experience than a lot of other people would have if they didn't grow up in a similar upbringing the way that Robbie did with his family. So I found myself tearing up a lot in this film because it just felt very real. There's a point in Robbie's life where he is on top, but his grandma winds up passing away of old age. And it really sends him spiraling. And I just went through that also myself within the last year with my grandma. So again, this review is going to be a little biased because it hit me on a level that's not going to hit everybody. But that aside, the heart in this film is incredible. The performances from everybody, even the chimpanzee they hired to play Robbie Williams, is absolutely Oscar worthy. The songs themselves, I didn't know Robbie Williams before this movie. I haven't listened to any of his songs. I wasn't a fan of the boy band stuff that they were doing, but once they got to the songs that Robbie wrote, I thought that they were all beautiful. I thought that this movie dealt with fame and how fame itself won't fix your problems, but how you view yourself and staying true to you will fix those problems. This movie touched upon how a lot of Robbie in his career was him trying to be somebody that everybody else wanted him to be, but him not being true to himself. And they manifest that with different versions of himself at different points of his life that pop up almost like ghostly apparitions while he's performing to let him know that they're disappointed in him. Like, he'll be doing like a boy band song that he doesn't give a shit about, but he's just doing it because he wants to be famous to impress his dad. And then he looks over in the crowd and he sees a very young version of himself just with their arms crossed, like disappointed in him. And it's this constant reminder that I'm not being true to who I am. And I think a lot of people suffer with that in the real world. And this movie did a great job at, like I said, manifesting that on the big screen and showing you a physical representation of that. And it ultimately leads to him realizing, I need to be who I am, and that's what causes him to branch off from his boy band and pursue his solo career, which got him to the stardom that he is today. This movie does a great job of holding a mirror up to you and making you ask the question, am I being true to myself? And I thought that that was really beautiful. I thought the movie as a whole was inspiring. The choreography was incredible. This is the best work out of this director that I've seen. And again, he did The Greatest Showman, which I think is one of the greatest musicals of all time. I think this one is better. And the sets, oh my God, when he breaks out into song and dance, the sets that they build and the things happening around him are truly beautiful to look at. Like a music video come to life in the real world. This movie is shot on film, and you could tell it has this very grungy, grainy look to it. And it, again, made the movie feel less fantastical and more real and grounded. And I loved it. It was just such a beautiful movie to look at. And then the movie ends with a tribute to Frank Sinatra. And it was just a perfect bow on top of the cake for me. Like, it just wrapped up so beautifully. And I left the theater and I looked at my uncle and I was like, this movie felt really personal to us. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah, we were both crying about it. And it was really beautiful. Now, at the end of the day, do I think this movie is going to appeal to a broader audience that it doesn't feel personal to? Yeah, I really do. It's not like this look at me, I'm famous type of movie. It doesn't shy away from the fact that he hit some lows and became a real piece of shit before he was able to hit rock bottom and build himself back to the top. I think it's a great movie for anyone pursuing something that's a little out of the ordinary and you feel like, down on your luck about it. This movie is inspiring. It'll lift you up. It'll show you that no matter how low you go, you can pull yourself out of it. It has great music, great acting, great performances, and it has a perfect ending that makes you feel like you got a full experience out of this film. I really can't recommend it enough. As of right now, it's my favorite movie of the year. I'm gonna give this a 10 out of 10. It's perfect. There's nothing negative I can say about it. I really can't wait for it to come out on Blu-ray so I can watch it over and over and over and over and over again and cry alone in my room where no one can make fun of me. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Did you even know this movie existed? Are you excited to see it after watching my review, or have you listened to it and you were like, fuck that movie? Let's talk about it down below. And as always, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll catch you next time.